And obviously, the big topic here for most people is fall. At least an early variant of it has arrived in Michigan in force, and talk a little bit more about that. There's some. We're going to have more of the same here for much of the next week, but summer's not over yet, and I think that's another take home from our outlook. But I do looking at the last week here. I think it's worth again looking a little bit behind on the left-hand side here, these are mean temperature departures from normal for the past week. And you can see a color we haven't seen a whole lot of with temperature departures this growing season. That's cooler than normal conditions over the entire state and region, and not just cooler than normal, but significantly cooler. Most of the state between 6 and 10 degrees Fahrenheit, cooler than normal. That was the second consecutive cooler than normal week that we've had, and one of the large, and as I'll show you just here in a second, one of the largest departures during the growing season. Just as importantly here on the right-hand side, our precipitation totals for the week were once again highly variable. The northern part of the state definitely had heavier and more widespread precipitation than did the south. Our totals for the week ranging from less than, some cases, less than a tenth of an inch across west central and southwestern lower Michigan, which is unfortunately one of the driest parts of the state as well, to well over an inch, in some cases more than 2 inches across portions of upper Michigan. So that is consistent with what a lot of the growing season here. High spatial variability with precipitation, but as I think everyone knows, we do have a wide range of conditions here from almost still excess water in portions to unfavorably dry or areas where it has been dry for some time. And I mentioned temperatures here. This is a graphic just to give some perspective about the last couple of weeks. This is daily. These are daily temperatures from the Lansing area. It's certainly representative of central and southern lower Michigan, and really, I think it's useful looking at the state as a whole. But the blue lines here, the blue bars, are the observed maximum and minimum temperatures for a given day. Again, going back to the beginning of May through this one's through Tuesday, I believe, or actually through yesterday. And the reason I show this is actually to look at this versus climatology. And so what you see in the background, the colors there, the brown area, those are the normal max and minimum high temperatures for that date. Where it should be the reds at the top, that's the maximum or the record maximum, and then the blues are the record minimum temperatures. And what you can see here for the 2025 growing season, again, if we define that as the from May onward, we've generally been at or above warmer than normal. Then that's certainly been true for the southern, at least half, if not more, of the state. There are areas in the north that have actually been a little cooler than normal, but they're more the exception than the rule. But for much of the state, this is representative. And you can look here at the last couple of weeks over here on the right-hand side, the last week to 2 weeks of August plus the beginning of September, and you can see our temperatures have really fallen off with Canadian origin air masses in the state, and that's what we have right now, and that's what we're going to have for at least the next week. But to give it some perspective, again, this the last couple of weeks have been probably the coolest relative period in our growing season that we've had so far, certainly since the very beginning. You can see the month of May, we also had some cooler than normal weather back then, but the rest of it, especially the middle of the growing season, has been at least, if not a little bit above normal for the growing season. For moisture across the state, as I mentioned, a highly variable range of conditions here. There's two graphics on here. The one on the left or on the left side here, this is something called the drought. It's a drought index looking at long-term multi-indicators with generally the abundance or lack of precipitation. And you can see a pattern develop here or very, very easily spatially. And that is basically we've had above normal rainfall in the northern part of the state and even in a couple portions of the southeastern corner of the state. But in between, especially central lower Michigan, southwestern lower Michigan, we've had the opposite with a lack of rainfall. And on the right-hand side here, what is that translated to? Well, this is looking at a dry land system landscape. These are soil moisture values expressed as a percentile, from 0 being the driest in climatological record to 100 being the wettest, but all of the browns and reds here indicate drier than normal conditions for certainly for the early part of September. You can see there still are some areas up in the far north, especially central upper Michigan, where we still have a little bit of excess, but that again, that is more the exception than the rule. And we do have issues and significant challenges, or we have had challenges with unfavorable dryness, especially across central and southwestern lower Michigan, and that continues to the present time. And as many of you have noted and observed, I certainly have here in the local area. It's been amazing, really, especially here locally in Ingham, Clinton County, where I spend most of my time. The rapid senescence and dry down here, especially in the last week, has really come on quickly. And I would submit that a good chunk of that, or some of that, is certainly related to these long-term dry conditions that we've had. It's pushed things along, and it's the crop, the condition, the color, the dry down, especially the yellowing soybeans. It's all happened very, very rapidly, but some of it is related directly to what you see here. Degree day totals here. How much heat have we had? Well, the totals currently, this is beginning in the 1st of May, and these are 8650 corn units, but they range from around 1400 in the far northern part of the state to about 2400 in the far south. So it's quite a range from north to south. On the right-hand side here, those are those totals, so seasonal totals relative to the climate normals. And for most of the state, you see yellows, reds, oranges, indicating a surplus or greater than normal level or number of degree days. There's a couple spots, again, central upper Michigan and then portions of east central and southeastern lower Michigan where we have some deficits, but it's much, much more common here, especially across southwestern lower Michigan, to see big surpluses. That's very, even with our forecast looking at fall weather here for the next week, even with that, it's highly, highly likely that we will finish the year with surpluses of degree days in those areas. That in mind, I mentioned this before in one of the our earlier briefings, but looking here at, and some of you have seen this before, this is the corn growing degree day application available from the Midwest Regional Climate Center. It's a really handy application to use, and what essentially, so there's a lot on here, but it tells a story. I think it's important, and that is looking at corn development, especially. We're looking here hypothetically at a 103-day or maturity day hybrid, which is planted in Ingham County. Again, this is representative of the south and central part of the Lower Peninsula. It's planted on May 1, and what we're looking at here is the accumulation of base 50 degree days from that date relative to normal. And then just as importantly, and what's more useful out here, relative to the black layer requirements or maturity requirements, in other words, do we make it to maturity? And relative to the first freezing temperatures climatologically of the fall season. And that's what you see here in these blue bars. That's when we have, over the last 40 years, we've seen the first occurrence of 28 degrees in the fall. And you can see that in Ingham County, that typically happens here. It's as early as the end of September, but most of those first killing freezes occur in Ingham County in the 3rd or 4th week of October, or even later. Sometimes it even goes into late November in some years. And that gives you the distribution and what the value of this particular application is. Again, it gives us an idea how likely are we to reach physiological maturity for a hybrid here before we do get the killing freeze. And what you can see from this graphic is, because of those surpluses, it's highly, highly likely, again, that it does finish off and reach maturity before we do see the freezing temperatures. And this is true for much of lower Michigan, certainly much of the southern 2/3 of the state. But there are locations in the state, and this one from the Upper Peninsula, South Central Upper Peninsula here in Delta County, where it's a little bit different situation. Here, we're using an 85-day or relative maturity day hybrid, also planted on the 1st of May. And what this one suggests is that we're getting close to physiological maturity, but there are some years in the past we have had killing freeze before we reach the threshold. This one actually suggested in this case it may be difficult even with climatology to reach that physiological maturity level. So there are a range of conditions. Most of the state is like the Ingham County that we've looked at, but there are places such as the central portion of Upper Michigan where we're lacking. That deficit is most years in Michigan we have that situation where we're in a race to get the crop finished up before freeze happens, and that again in those locations this year that is also true, but most of the state is not. We're ahead of normal. Well, let's shift gears and move to our outlook, starting with some current conditions across the state. That's on the left-hand side here. The cold front that went through the state yesterday brought fairly widespread showers and thunderstorms to much of the state. These are 24-hour precip totals here on the right. Those are not reflected in the total that you saw before, which is why I've got that here. But this is important because for much of the state, especially for some of those areas in central and southern lower Michigan that have been so dry, with some of the most widespread rain, or certainly the best rains that we've had in a few weeks. Now, of course, the timing is not optimal for what it could be, but we still have soybeans out there that certainly could benefit from some additional water. And in most areas, we got a solid quarter to half an inch. Again, that in the big picture, it's certainly significant. It's not huge, but it's better than we've had in many of those areas for a long time. And note too, the coverage of this was really, really good. A lot of the rainfall this growing season has been scattered or highly variable. This one was much, much more uniform. Well, in our outlook here, the cold front is now pushing out of Michigan and into the Ohio Valley to our south with cool, much cooler air. It's only in the 40s in portions of the Upper Peninsula and into the northern lower. We're only going to see high temperatures today here from the 50s north to the 60s, so at least a good 15 degrees cooler than it has been over the last couple of days. There still are some scattered showers lingering up north, mainly across Upper Michigan. But we have another weather system that's going to be approaching here from the west. That's the next thing we'll look at. But on our weather map here this morning, here's the cold front that went through yesterday. There's a weak troughing feature that's setting off those showers that we just saw on the radar, and that'll be true again, mainly across Upper Michigan here during the day. In the Lower Peninsula, essentially an early fall day with mostly cloudy or partly sunny at best, breezy and much cooler conditions. So a lot of like what we see. Some of these are lake effect clouds because the lakes are still warm relative to the air now. Moving across them, by tomorrow morning, our next weather system moves into the state. You can see that's an area of low pressure, and it's going to move right across the far northern lower and up. And most of the impact from that will be across the north, with much less as you go south. We'll see probably another quarter to half an inch of rain during the day. Well, starting here overnight tonight and then into early tomorrow. That's most of when this will happen. But the other part of the lesson here is there's more Canadian air behind this. Another reinforcing shot of cool air behind that, and it's going to set the stage for an unusually cool upcoming weekend, or very fall-like weekend for this week, and especially relative to what we had last week, which was almost ideal conditions. And here's finally the weather map for Saturday morning. Not much change. Still some scattering showers lingering in northern parts of the state, but generally partly sunny to mostly cloudy skies in the south and cool, but dry. So southern part is most of the precip here, most of the action will be across the north. And our precip totals through the next week here, you can see range from none in the far south part of the state to more than an inch in the far north. So a big gradient or change. The north will still be wet. South expected to be dry once again. With cool temperatures expected here for the next several days, our potential evapotranspiration rates, not surprisingly, are going to be below normal, only 800ths to 1400ths. Again, water demand, even in those dry areas in the south, is going to be reduced just because of the environmental conditions. It's just we can evaporate less water. So much less than what we observed here during a lot of the late summer. And then moving on here to finally to the medium range, how long does this pattern last that we're in right now? Because it's been around now for at least a week and a half, and the answer is probably it's longer than we had suspected, earlier. The guidance had suggested maybe a change coming up in early September. Well, that's been delayed. And right now, the best guess is we've got the most of this week with the troughing over the eastern part of North America, northerly, northwesterly flow aloft, and cool temperatures. But we will see a noticeable moderation in temperatures during next week, especially the middle and latter part of the week, and probably back to above normal temperatures by the end of next work week. So one of the take homes again, yes, it's going to be cool for the next several days, but there is warmer weather ahead. We're not out of that yet. And what we have right now, obviously, is a little bit early. The other major theme, I think, a major take home here with the medium range guidance, is I move to the 8 to 14 day time frame, drier than normal. That's also showing up. That's been consistent over the last several days. And note here for the 8 to 14 day time frame, one thing, well, we have building ridging over much of the continental U.S., and that's going to lead to warmer temperatures. And that's that change I mentioned in terms of temperature. And here it actually does show in our outlook for the 11th through the 17th that we go back to warmer than normal. And I think as we look ahead on the calendar, that's likely to happen by the end of next work week, that we'll see high temperatures probably back up in many areas near 80 again. So it is that time of the year, but again, this onset of fall is temporary, and we very likely will go back to warmer than normal, but also continue again the drier on the negative side for precipitation. Now, the last one here, looking at our new long lead outlooks, which were issued just at the end of last week, our outlook for September, the month, has changed because of that cool pattern at the beginning of the month. It had been calling for warmer than normal mean temperatures, and now the new outlook for September, equal chances, no forecast direction, either warm or cool, and that's true for precipitation. But that is a direct result of what you just saw, with the first part of the month expected to remain, especially for the first week to week and a half, cooler than normal. But down to the bottom two panels here for the 3 month outlook, September through November, you can see once again warmer than normal, and that has been consistent in our previous issuances of our long leads. Still warmer than normal is a good bet. So again, I mentioned the surpluses, especially those areas that have degree days, surpluses. That's great. It also is helpful for the areas that are a little bit behind that we saw, for example, in the Upper Peninsula. That should help to get some additional warmth at the end of the growing season. For precip, no direction, either above or below. But again, I think the message here is that warmer than normal conditions likely to continue. In the long lead outlook here, we're looking at a marginal, possibly La Nina event. We're right at the neutral, right at the threshold of that here. And that would be, if you've been counting, that sounds familiar. Well, it should be familiar because 4 of the last 5 winters in the Northern Hemisphere, we've had at least weak La Nina conditions. That doesn't happen very often, but much of our extended outlook, which does call for wetter than normal conditions into the winter, maybe more snow than normal, that's predicated on that La Nina being there. But my observation and my take on that is that it's very weak at best. We're likely to be mostly neutral, so neither El Nino or La Nina, especially as we move into the winter. So I wouldn't put at least a lot of confidence or faith in that outlook, but that's officially what Climate Prediction Center is calling for as we move into the winter itself. So I'll wrap up there. Again, early taste of fall here. And again, I just hope that you got a chance to take advantage of the weather last weekend, which doesn't get much better to be outside because this weekend is not going to be nearly as favorable in many ways, but it is a sign of the seasons. And I'll wrap up there